This is one of the most violent images ever commissioned by a king. At first glance, it looks like a royal hunt, but nothing about this is ordinary. This is what power looked like nearly 3,000 years ago. Look closely. The arrows, the movement, the detail. This isn't just a scene of hunting, it's something far more deliberate. These reliefs come from the palaces of the Assyrian kings, rulers of one of the most powerful empires in the ancient world. At its height, the Assyrian Empire stretched from the eastern Mediterranean to the Persian Gulf, controlling cities, trade routes, and vast populations across the Near East. It was an empire built on military strength, but sustained through organization, administration, and the projection of authority. And in a world without mass communication, power had to be made visible. It had to be experienced. These carvings lined the walls of royal residences, spaces designed not only for living, but for ceremony and display. As a Assyriologist, Julian Reed has shown in his studies of these palaces, the reliefs were arranged so that anyone entering would encounter them in sequence. Power was not hidden, it was encountered step by step. To understand what we're looking at, you have to understand the king. This is Ashurbanipal, one of the last great rulers of the Assyrian Empire. He ruled at a time when Assyria stood at the height of its influence, projecting power across regions through both force and control. But Assyrian kings were not simply political leaders. They occupied a position between the human and the divine. Chosen by the gods, they were expected to maintain balance in the world. That responsibility went beyond governing people. It meant confronting disorder and restoring order whenever it broke down. And that idea of order against chaos is at the center of what we're seeing here. And nowhere was that role more visible than in the royal lion hunt. These were not ordinary hunts in the wild. Archaeological and visual evidence show that lions were captured and released into controlled environments. As Julian Reed has noted in his work on the Nineveh reliefs, these were carefully managed royal events. The hunt was real, but it was orchestrated. Once released, the lions surge forward. Powerful, fast, unpredictable. For a moment, they are pure force. And then, they are brought down. Look closely. The level of detail is extraordinary. The muscles tighten beneath the surface. Each line carved to suggest movement, strain, and resistance. The body is not static. It twists, it reacts, it fights. Even in injury, the lion is not reduced to weakness. It retains its power, its weight, its presence. The artists are not simply recording an event, they are observing it, studying how the body moves, how it responds to force, how it reacts to pain. And nowhere is that clearer than in the face. The mouth opens, the eyes widen, the expression is held somewhere between resistance and collapse. This is not a simplified image of defeat. It is a prolonged moment where strength and suffering exist at the same time. As scholars of Assyrian art has noted, these reliefs are remarkable for their attention to naturalistic detail. And that detail matters. Because the more powerful the lion appears, the more powerful the king must be to overcome it. But the sequence does not end with the kill. In the later scenes, the lions are no longer fighting. Their bodies are still. Their movement is gone. They are lifted, carried, removed from the space. The violence has passed. What remains is control. The same animals that moments before were powerful, unpredictable, and dangerous are now reduced to weight, handled, transported, contained once again. The sequence is complete. The lion has been confronted, overcome, and finally removed. What we are seeing is not just the act of killing, but the restoration of order. Chaos does not simply disappear, it is subdued and then taken away. But these scenes are doing more than showing what happened. As Irene Winter explains in a study of Neo-Assyrian reliefs, they construct an ideal image of kingship. In the Assyrian thought, the lion represented chaos, a force that threatened order that had to be confronted and overcome. And the king was the one chosen to do it. This wasn't about survival, it was about demonstrating control. Control over nature, control over violence, control over the world itself. In his own inscriptions, recorded in texts preserved and studied by the British Museum, Ashurbanipal describes seizing and killing lions himself, presenting his actions as carried out with strength granted by the gods Ashur and Ishtar. To walk through these spaces was to be surrounded by power. Every wall carried the same message, repeated again and again. You would not just see the king, you would experience him in every direction. These images were not private. They were seen by officials, by subjects, and by foreign envoys entering the palace. As Reed and other Assyriologists have shown, they formed part of a wider visual program across the palace. The king hunts, the king conquers, the king dominates. But these images were not created without purpose. As Irene Winter argues, they functioned as a form of royal communication, projecting an ideal image of the king. A king who could defeat lions was a king who could defeat enemies. A ruler chosen by the gods was a ruler who could not be challenged. They reinforced a simple idea that the king's authority was absolute, extending over both the natural world and the human one. The lions are real, the violence is real, but what we're looking at is something carefully constructed. Not just a record of events, but a deliberate image of kingship, a vision of power, designed, repeated, and carved into stone nearly 3,000 years ago.